The silver Bentley tore through the San Francisco night like a bullet. Preston Caldwell sitting in the back seat, his face pale with rage. Two black SUVs followed close behind, his private security detail. "Have you found her yet?" Preston's voice was icy cold. "Yes, sir." At a house in Haight-Ashbury, with a man named Jacob Turner. Preston clenched his fists. Madison Clark, the million-dollar bride who had turned him into the laughingstock of the entire city when she fled the altar. Now she was at some stranger's house. "Daddy, there's someone outside the door." 8-year-old Grace's voice trembled as she peeked through the window. 3 black cars were parked in front of the house, headlights blazing into the living room of the pastel Victorian home. Jacob Turner placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder, feeling the tension saturating the air. Madison stood near the staircase, her face ashen. She knew exactly who was outside. The doorbell rang. Once, twice, then pounding, loud as thunder. "Madison!" Preston's voice boomed through the thick wooden door. "I know you're in there." Madison looked at Jacob, her eyes full of desperation. "You don't understand." Preston never gives up on anything he thinks belongs to him. "You don't belong to anyone," Jacob said, his voice calm but resolute. "And I won't let him take you." The pounding on the door grew more violent. Grace clung tightly to her father's leg, her wide eyes fixed on the door. "Daddy, what's happening?" This was the decisive moment. Jacob Turner, a man who had lost everything 3 years ago, now had to face a powerful billionaire to protect the woman who had changed his life. But how did it all begin? Why was Madison Clark, the daughter of one of San Francisco's wealthiest families, standing in this modest home? And what had driven a widowed man to challenge an entire financial empire? This story began 3 weeks earlier, on another rainy night. If you've ever had to make a split-second decision that changed your life forever, hit the like button on this video and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next ones. 3 weeks earlier, on a rainy night in San Francisco, Jacob Turner's old Honda Civic chugged up the winding hills of Pacific Heights. He had just left Grace's parent-teacher conference, still hearing Ms. Peterson's words echoing in his mind. Grace is becoming more withdrawn. She rarely talks to her classmates, often seems absent-minded during lessons. The teacher's voice was gentle but laced with concern. "You might want to consider professional counseling." Jacob knew she was right. But with his modest IT technician salary, therapy was almost impossible. Ever since Olivia died of breast cancer 3 years ago, he had been raising his daughter, carrying the financial burden, and trying to keep everything from falling apart. Lost in calculations of next month's bills, Jacob suddenly noticed a strange figure by the roadside. A woman in a white wedding dress, barefoot, her hair drenched in the rain, stumbling along Castro Street. Jacob frowned. In San Francisco, a city not short of oddities, this sight still made him slow down. The woman stopped beneath a street lamp. Now Jacob could see more clearly. The once glorious gown was soaked through, its hem torn and ragged. But it wasn't the dress that held him. It was the way she stood, as if the whole world had abandoned her. Jacob understood that feeling. After Olivia died, he too had spent nights standing aimlessly in the street, not knowing where to go or what to do with the rest of his life. He rolled down the window. "Do you need help?" The woman turned, blue eyes shimmering with rain, a beautiful face filled with despair. Even in her ruined state, traces of refinement remained: the flawless skin, the orthodontist's smile, the posture of someone raised in privilege. "I'm fine," she said, her voice trembling but still carrying a hint of nobility. "Just taking a walk." Jacob glanced at the empty road. A walk? In a wedding dress? In a downpour? On Castro Street? Near 11 at night? A bitter smile flickered across her lips. Sounds insane, doesn't it? Jacob gave a slight nod. I've done crazier things. Get in. I'll drive you wherever you need to go. No questions, no judgment. She hesitated, glancing behind her as if afraid someone was following. I don't know where to go. Then we'll figure it out on the way. Madison Clark, the name Jacob didn't know yet, finally opened the door and slid into the passenger seat. The scene was surreal. A $1 million wedding gown against the cracked leather of an old Civic. The faint click of the seatbelt broke the tense silence. I'm Jacob, he introduced as the car began moving. Madison, she answered after a pause. Thank you. They drove quietly through the familiar streets of San Francisco. Jacob occasionally glanced in the rearview mirror. Madison sat upright, her gaze distant through the fogged window. Her proud beauty was intact, but he saw the fracture beneath it. Are you cold? Jacob asked, noticing her shoulders trembling. A little. He reached into the back seat and pulled out Grace's old sweater. Use this. Madison accepted it, smiling gratefully. When she slipped the little girl's Hello Kitty sweater over her luxurious gown, the image was both heartbreaking and oddly humorous. Your daughter? Madison asked softly, running her fingers over the pink pattern. Grace, 8 years old. She's sleeping at a friend's house tonight. What about your wife? Jacob was silent for a moment, then said quietly, She passed away. 3 years ago, Madison turned to him, her eyes full of compassion. I'm sorry. Thank you. The Civic turned into Haight-Ashbury, where colorful Victorian houses stood shoulder to shoulder. Jacob stopped in front of his mint-green 3-story home, its wooden facade carved in the 19th century. This is my place, he said. There's a guest room if you need it. No pressure, just a warm spot to think. Madison looked at the house, then back at Jacob. Why? You don't know who I am. I could be anyone. Jacob cut the engine and faced her. When Olivia, my wife, was dying, she told me, if I ever get the chance to help someone find themselves again, I should do it. She said, true love is helping someone become who they want to be. Tears rolled down Madison's cheeks. She must have been an incredible woman. She would have liked you, Jacob said softly. That night, in the small kitchen, Madison sat with a steaming cup of coffee in her hands. The warm glow from the old chandelier filled the room, so different from the cold, flawless emptiness of the penthouse she used to live in. I almost married Preston Caldwell, Madison confessed, her voice hoarse. He's the CEO of Caldwell Industries, one of the biggest corporations on the West Coast. My family, they were thrilled about the marriage. Jacob didn't interrupt, just listened. Preston is smart, rich, charming. On paper, the perfect husband. But, she faltered, searching for words, he doesn't love me. He loves the image of me. Madison Clark, the Clark family's daughter, a jewel to strengthen his social standing. And you? Did you love him? Madison shook her head. I thought I did, or fooled myself into believing it. But today, standing in front of 500 guests, seeing Preston at the end of the aisle, I realized I was about to disappear. Jacob knew that feeling. Not disappear like Olivia, gone forever, but vanish piece by piece until nothing real remained. So you ran. I ran straight out of the church. Past the reception hall, the photographers, the wedding planners, past my mother's horrified face. I just kept running, until I couldn't anymore. Jacob placed his hand near hers, not touching. That's not a bad start for a new beginning. They talked until nearly 3 in the morning. Jacob shared his fears of raising a child alone, the guilt of moving forward while Olivia was gone. Madison spoke of the pressure of wealth, the loss of herself in her family's expectations. When Jacob led her to the guest room, offering Olivia's old sleepwear and toiletries, Madison whispered, "Thank you, Jacob, for stopping the car, for not asking too much, for being kind. Good night," he smiled. "Tomorrow is a new day." Jacob had no idea that tomorrow would bring changes far beyond anything he could imagine. The next morning, Jacob awoke to the sound of Grace's laughter coming from the kitchen. He was taken aback. Grace was usually quiet in the mornings, especially on weekends when she only wanted to watch cartoons and eat cereal in silence. He walked downstairs and froze at the rare sight before him. Madison stood at the stove, wearing one of Olivia's old sweaters with a pair of jeans, her hair tied up neatly. She was flipping golden pancakes, while Grace sat at the kitchen table, her eyes lighting up at each turn of the spatula. "Daddy!" Grace squealed when she saw him. "Emma's mom brought me home early because Emma got sick, and there's a lady making pancakes." A flicker of alarm passed through Jacob. He had always kept a tight control over Grace's surroundings, trying to shield her from sudden changes that might shake her even more after Olivia's death. Now, there was a stranger in the kitchen. He had no idea how Grace would react. "I'm Madison," she introduced herself, crouching down to meet Grace's gaze. "Your dad's friend. He helped me when I was in trouble." "Are you Daddy's girlfriend?" Grace asked bluntly, the kind of frankness only a child could manage. Jacob's face turned red. "Grace? Don't." "It's okay," Madison cut in quickly, smiling. "I'm just someone who needed help." "Your dad was kind enough to give it." Grace tilted her head, observing Madison with her characteristic curiosity. "Daddy's really good at helping people," she said. "When I'm sad about Mommy, he always hugs me and says she's in a beautiful place." Jacob's throat tightened. Grace rarely spoke of Olivia so freely. "Your mom must have been very special," Madison said softly, neither avoiding the subject nor making Grace uncomfortable. "She made the best pancakes," Grace replied, then turned to Jacob. "But Daddy's don't taste the same. His are usually burnt or too thick." Madison let out a gentle laugh. "Maybe we can practice together then?" Throughout breakfast, Jacob carefully watched how Madison interacted with Grace. Though uneasy about letting a stranger into their private world, he noticed how natural she was, not overbearing, not prying, and most importantly, she didn't shy away when Grace mentioned Olivia. "I have to go to work," Jacob said reluctantly. He had a client meeting he couldn't cancel. "Madison, do you need me to drop you anywhere?" "I'll be fine," Madison replied. "I should start figuring out my next steps anyway." "Can Madison stay with me until you come back?" Grace asked. "I want to show her my rock collection." Jacob hesitated, leaving Grace with someone who was practically a stranger. But the way Madison looked at his daughter made him feel an odd sense of ease. "If you don't mind," he said. "I'd be happy to stay," Madison answered, and Jacob knew she meant it. That afternoon when he returned, Jacob found Madison and Grace in the backyard, surrounded by paper and crayons. Grace was chattering about her drawings while Madison listened intently. "This one's about Mommy," Grace said, pointing to a pencil sketch. "I drew her gardening. She loved roses." "Your mom had a garden?" Madison asked. "Yes, but it's gone now." Grace's voice dropped. "Daddy doesn't know how to take care of plants. Mommy said, Daddy's good at lots of things, but doesn't have a green thumb." Jacob's heart ached. The garden had once been Olivia's pride. Since her passing, he hadn't had the strength to watch it wither, and eventually left it abandoned. Maybe we could bring it back, Madison said gently, if your dad agrees. Grace's eyes lit up as she looked at Jacob. Can we, Daddy? His throat went dry. The thought of touching Olivia's garden was still too painful. We'll think about it, okay? That evening, after Grace went to bed, Jacob and Madison sat in the living room with cups of tea. The air between them was taut, not uncomfortable, but edged with the strangeness of unfamiliar closeness. Grace is really smart, Madison said, and she loves you so much. She's been through too much for her age, Jacob replied. Some nights she still cries out for her mom. I don't know if I'm doing this right. Madison was quiet for a moment. Have you ever thought about seeking professional help? Jacob sighed. I have. But the cost right now. He stopped, embarrassed. Sorry, I shouldn't complain about money. Don't apologize, Madison said firmly. There's no shame in it. You've sacrificed so much for your family. They sat in silence. Jacob felt at ease with Madison there, yet worry grew inside him. For 3 years, his life had revolved around Grace and work. Now, with a woman in the house, everything felt complicated. Madison, he said at last, I have to ask, do you have a plan? I mean, you can't stay here forever. Madison nodded. I know. I'll start looking for a job tomorrow, and a place of my own. I don't want to intrude on you and Grace. You're not intruding, Jacob blurted, then paused. Had he said it too fast? I mean, Grace was happier today than I've seen her in a long time. She hasn't spoken about her mom so naturally in years. Grace needs time, Madison said softly. And so do you. The following week flowed with a new, comforting rhythm. Madison found a part-time job at a local nonprofit. The pay was modest, but it gave her independence. Jacob saw Grace gradually warming to Madison. She was still cautious, but she began sharing little stories about school and friends. Most importantly, Grace spoke about Olivia endlessly, and Madison always listened without changing the subject. Mom always sang to me before bed, Grace said one evening while Madison helped with homework. Daddy doesn't sing as well as Mom. How does your dad sing? Madison laughed. Like a rooster with a cold, Grace giggled. But I still like it. Standing on the stairs, eavesdropping, Jacob felt warmth surge through him. It had been so long since he'd heard Grace laugh about Olivia, instead of just feeling sad. But Jacob also realized he was starting to look forward to evenings with Madison. The way she brewed tea, the way she listened to him talk about work, the way she didn't judge his circumstances. And that frightened him. One night, after Grace was asleep, Jacob saw Madison standing by the living room window, gazing at the city lights. Do you regret it? He asked suddenly. Regret what? Running away. Walking out on your old life, Madison was thoughtful. Sometimes I wonder if I was crazy. Preston could have given me a comfortable, secure life. And now, she gave a wry smile. I earn minimum wage and sleep on the couch of a man I just met. A pang struck Jacob's chest. Do you want to go back? No, Madison said firmly. Never. No matter how hard it is, at least now I'm living as myself. They sat quietly. Jacob felt something shift between them. Not love, not yet, but understanding and respect. Jacob, Madison said softly, I don't want you to feel obligated to me. I know this is temporary. What if I don't want it to be temporary? He blurted, instantly regretting it. Madison looked at him, startled. Jacob, I'm sorry, he rushed. I didn't mean. Don't apologize, she interrupted gently. But you need to be sure of what you're saying. You have a daughter who needs you. And me. I'm still figuring out who I am. Jacob nodded. Madison was right. They both needed time. But that time was running out. Elsewhere in the city, Preston Caldwell was hiring the best private investigators to track down his runaway bride. 2 weeks passed in an unfamiliar but comforting rhythm. Jacob grew used to coming home to the sound of voices in the kitchen instead of the heavy silence that had haunted the house for 3 years. Madison and Grace had formed a special bond, not quite mother and daughter, but like two friends separated by age. Madison knows so much about flowers, Grace told Jacob one evening. She said some bloom in the winter, and some grow well in the shade. Jacob glanced out the window toward Olivia's neglected garden. Since his wife's passing, he had always avoided that place. Now, after hearing Grace's words, he wondered, was letting the garden rot really the way to honor Olivia's memory? Meanwhile, Madison was settling into her work at the nonprofit. She was helping women rebuild their lives after leaving toxic relationships. The job gave her a sense of purpose, something she had never felt before. Today I met a woman, Madison shared with Jacob one evening. She was controlled by her husband for 15 years. Now at 45, she's just learning how to open her own bank account. Jacob heard the empathy in her voice. Sounds familiar. In some ways, yes, Madison admitted. I wasn't controlled to that extent, but I lived in a golden cage. I never had to worry about money, but I never got to decide my own life either. Jacob studied her face. Madison was so different from the night he met her. Little makeup, simple clothes, but a light in her eyes he had never seen before. Do you miss your old life? He asked. Madison thought for a moment. I miss the convenience, not worrying about electric bills or how much a car repair would cost. But I don't miss the feeling of not living. At the same time, Grace was changing too. Ms. Peterson called Jacob one afternoon. I don't know what you've done, the teacher said, but Grace is like a different child. She participates more in class. She plays with other kids. Did something special happen at home? Jacob looked toward the living room, where Madison was helping Grace with math. Some positive changes, he answered carefully. That night, Jacob told Madison about the call. What did she say? Madison looked nervous. She said Grace has made real progress. And I know a big part of it is because of you. Madison blushed. I just listened to her. Grace is wonderful. You've done more than that, Jacob said. You've shown her it's okay to talk about her mom without fear. I used to think avoiding the subject would ease her pain, but pain doesn't disappear when you avoid it, Madison said softly. It only grows in the dark. Jacob realized Madison was speaking as much about herself as about Grace. That weekend, Grace surprised them with a suggestion. Daddy, can we go to Golden Gate Park? Madison said, There's a beautiful rose garden there. Jacob hesitated. Family outings had once been sacred for him, Olivia, and Grace. But when he saw his daughter's eager eyes, he couldn't refuse. All right, he said, we'll go. At Golden Gate Park, Jacob watched Madison and Grace together. Madison pointed out different plants, explained how to care for them. Grace listened intently, more focused than Jacob had ever seen her. Mom said she would teach me how to garden, Grace said as they sat on a bench, but she got sick before we started. The familiar ache tightened in Jacob's chest. There were too many things Olivia had never had the chance to pass on. Too many memories left unmade. Your mom would be happy to know you're learning about flowers, Madison said. And I think she would like the idea of you growing your own garden. Really? Grace asked, her eyes shining. I think so. People who love flowers always want to share that love. On the way home, Grace fell asleep in the back seat. The car was quiet except for soft music from the radio. "Thank you," Jacob said suddenly. "For what?" "For not trying to replace Olivia. For helping Grace understand that loving someone new doesn't mean forgetting the one we lost." Madison looked at him, her eyes deep. "I learned that from you and Grace. From how real love works." Jacob's heart raced, but he focused on the road. They were still moving, slowly, carefully, still discovering each other. That night, after Grace was asleep, Jacob found Madison at the kitchen table with her laptop. "What are you working on?" he asked, pouring her a cup of tea. "I'm writing about my experience," Madison replied. "The nonprofit has a blog. My boss thinks my story might help other women." Jacob leaned closer. "What are you writing?" "That material comfort can't make up for losing yourself. That you have to learn to live authentically instead of just existing." "Sounds good," Jacob said. "Can I read it?" Madison hesitated. "I mention you and Grace. Not by name, but—" "I want to read it," Jacob said firmly. He read silently while Madison watched his face anxiously. The post was raw and heartfelt, recounting her journey of leaving a prearranged life to search for true meaning. "This part is my favorite," Jacob pointed at the screen. "You wrote, 'I learned that love isn't about being taken care of, but about having the space to become the best version of yourself.'" Madison smiled. "I learned that from the way you love Grace. You don't try to make her into someone else. You just love her as she is." The silence between them grew heavy, but not rushed. Jacob felt he was finally starting to understand Madison, not as the desperate bride he'd met in the rain, but as a strong, intelligent woman reclaiming herself. "Madison," he said quietly, "I want you to know that—" The phone rang, cutting him off. Jacob glanced at the screen. An unknown number. "Jacob Turner?" The voice on the other end was cold, commanding. "Yes?" "This is Preston Caldwell. I believe you're hiding something that belongs to me?" Jacob's blood turned to ice. He looked at Madison. Her face had gone pale. "I don't know what you're talking about," Jacob said, trying to sound steady. "Madison Clark. She's with you. I want her back." Now Jacob looked at Madison. She shook her head violently. "I think you've got the wrong number," Jacob said, and hung up. Madison trembled. How did he find out? "That doesn't matter," Jacob said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "What matters is, what do you want to do now?" "I can't go back to him," Madison whispered. "I'd rather die." A new determination surged through Jacob. "Then you won't have to." But they both knew. Preston Caldwell was not a man to let go easily, and the real battle was only just beginning. The phone rang again. This time, Jacob let it ring. 2 days after Preston's call, Jacob began to realize they were being watched. A black sedan appeared at the end of the street, parked in the same spot 3 days in a row. In the cafe across from Madison's office, a man in a suit sat for hours, his eyes never leaving the building. "We need to talk," Jacob said, when Madison came home after a tense day at work. Grace was playing at a friend's house, leaving them a rare moment of privacy. Madison sat down at the kitchen table, her face faintly tired. "I know. A man came asking about me today. He said he was a reporter, but I'm sure he wasn't." Jacob felt anger flare. "Preston is ramping up pressure on you." "Not just that." Madison took out an old iPhone she had just bought with her first paycheck. "I got this message." Jacob read it, blood boiling in his veins. "Madison, you've played this game long enough. Your family is worried. The company is being affected. You have 48 hours to contact me. If not, I will take the necessary measures. P. He threatened you? Jacob asked, his voice taut. Madison nodded, fear glinting in her eyes. Jacob, you don't understand. Preston isn't just a wealthy businessman. He has influence with the police, judges, even politicians. He can turn our lives into hell. Jacob moved closer. Tell me the truth about him. I need to know who we're up against. Madison drew a deep breath, as if mustering all her courage. Preston Caldwell inherited Caldwell Industries from his father when he was 25. In 10 years, he turned it into one of the most powerful conglomerates in California. But the public has no idea how he got there. She paused, hesitating. Go on, Jacob urged. He's ruthless with his rivals. I once saw him destroy a man's career just for daring to oppose him in a meeting. Preston keeps personal files on everyone in the business world. Their weaknesses, secrets, what they fear most. Jacob shuddered. And with you? With me, he was different, Madison said, trembling. He never shouted, never hit me. But he controlled everything. What I wore, who I met, where I went. He said it was love, protection. But in reality, he wanted to own you, Jacob finished. Madison nodded. And now, for the first time, someone has taken something he thinks belongs to him. Preston will never let it go. That night, after Grace had fallen asleep, Jacob sat in his small office, searching for information about Preston. What he found only heightened his worry. Preston wasn't just rich. He had an extensive network. He sat on the boards of several charities, poured money into political campaigns, and wielded deep influence in California's financial circles. A few old articles mentioned lawsuits that Preston had won in mysterious ways. Opponents suddenly withdrew their claims. Key witnesses unexpectedly changed their testimony. What are you doing? Madison appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of hot tea. Jacob turned the screen toward her. I'm trying to understand the scope of Preston's influence. But the more I read, the worse it looks. Madison sat down beside him. That's only the tip of the iceberg. The hidden part is... For example, Jacob asked. She was silent, then decided to tell him. Once, a woman named Sarah Kim, an accountant at a Caldwell Industries subsidiary, discovered irregularities and planned to report them. Within a month, her son was arrested on drug charges, her husband lost his job, and the bank repossessed their house. She withdrew her complaint and vanished. I heard she moved to Portland and never dared mention Preston again. Jacob felt his stomach knot. Madison, maybe you should consider... No. Her voice was firm. I won't go back. No matter the price, Jacob looked deep into her eyes and saw the resolve there. Then we'll face it together. You don't understand. Preston can hurt you and Grace. He knows Grace is everything to you, and he'll exploit that. The thought froze Jacob's blood, but he knew he couldn't leave Madison to face this alone. We need help, he said. Someone who understands the law and how men like Preston operate. Who can help us stand up to Preston Caldwell? Madison asked, her voice tinged with despair. Jacob remembered. David Chen. Who? David Chen, a lawyer. He used to work with me at my old company, corporate law specialist, but he recently left a big firm to open his own practice. He once said he wanted to help regular people fight the powerful spark of hope lit in Madison's eyes. Do you think he'll help? I'm not sure. But David is the only person I know. The next day, Jacob arranged to meet David at a small cafe in the Mission District, where Preston was less likely to have eyes and ears. David Chen, 35, Asian, with sharp eyes, listened to the entire story without interrupting. Then he was silent for quite a while. I know Preston Caldwell, David said. My old firm used to work for him. I understand how he operates. Can you help? Madison asked. David looked at the two of them, his expression grave. Preston is one of the most dangerous men I've ever known. He has money, power, and most importantly, he knows how to exploit the legal system. Jacob's hope sagged. So, we don't stand a chance? I didn't say that, David replied. But you need to prepare for a grueling fight. Preston will use every tactic: civil suits, political pressure, even extra legal measures. You will help us, right? Madison asked again. David was quiet, then nodded. Yes. I left my old firm because I was sick of serving men like Preston. Now I want to stand with people who need protection. But we have to prepare very carefully. That night, when they returned home, Jacob and Madison carried both hope and anxiety. Dad, what's going on? Grace asked, seeing the heaviness in his eyes. Jacob knelt down. Sweetheart, there might be a few changes coming. Will Madison have to leave? Grace asked, her voice trembling. Jacob looked at Madison. Pain was written clearly across her face. We'll do everything we can to keep that from happening. Grace hugged Madison tightly. I don't want you to go anywhere. Madison's eyes brimmed. I don't want to either, sweetheart. But all three of them knew the final decision wasn't in their hands. That night, Jacob's phone rang. An unknown number. He looked at Madison. She nodded. Jacob put it on speaker. Mr. Turner, Preston's voice was cold. Your 48 hours are up. I hope you've thought this through. I've thought it through very carefully, Jacob answered, steady. And my decision is, Madison will stay here as long as she wants. A dry laugh crackled through the line. Mr. Turner, do you have any idea who I am? I do, and I don't care. Interesting. Very few people dare speak to me like that, but consider this a warning. This will not end well for you. We'll see, Jacob said, and hung up. Madison looked at him with a mix of admiration and fear. Jacob, do you know what you just did? I just protected someone I care about, Jacob replied, and I'll keep doing it. At any cost. But as they went to bed that night, both of them knew Preston Caldwell would not let that call pass in silence. The real war was about to begin. On Monday morning, Jacob was jolted awake by urgent knocking at the door. He glanced at the clock, 6:30. Grace was still asleep, and Madison was getting ready for work. Who would come this early? Madison asked, a flicker of worry on her face. Jacob peered out the window. Two men in black suits stood on the porch. One carried a leather briefcase, the other a camera. Mr. Jacob Turner. The first man spoke as Jacob opened the door. I'm Detective Mark Rodriguez, and this is our photographer. We're investigating a report of kidnapping. Jacob's blood froze. Kidnapping? Yes. Mr. Caldwell reported that his fiancée, Madison Clark, is being held here against her will. That's completely false, Jacob said, forcing calm into his voice. Ms. Clark is here of her own choice. May we speak with her? Rodriguez asked. Madison appeared behind Jacob. I'm here, she said, her voice trembling but firm, and I confirm that I am completely free. No one is holding me, Rodriguez scribbled notes. Can you provide identification? Madison handed over documents. I am Madison Clark, and I'm here because I choose to be. Preston Caldwell is not my husband, only a former fiancé. Mr. Caldwell claims you're suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, the detective replied. He says he's concerned about your mental health. Jacob's anger surged. These accusations are baseless. Daddy, what's going on? Grace's sleepy, frightened voice came from the staircase. Rodriguez glanced up, jotting something else in his notebook. You have a child in the house? My daughter, Jacob said, guarded. We may need to inspect the living environment to ensure child safety, the detective remarked. Jacob understood instantly. Preston was dragging child services into this to threaten his custody. You'll need a court order to enter my home, Jacob said firmly. And I want to call my lawyer. The detective gave a cold smile. Of course, you have that right. But I'd advise cooperation, to avoid unnecessary trouble. When they left, Jacob called David Chen immediately. They can't do anything without a warrant, David reassured him, but clearly, Preston is escalating. He's using the legal system to apply psychological pressure. They threatened a home inspection because of Grace, Jacob said. Silence on the line for a moment. That's serious. Preston may try to strip your custody with claims of an unstable environment. Jacob reeled. Can he actually do that? With enough money and influence? Possibly. We need to prepare thoroughly. The following week, the pressure only intensified. Neighbors eyed Jacob and Madison curiously after rumors of kidnapping swirled around their home. At school, Grace's classmates asked about the strange woman living with them. Daddy? Why is everyone asking about Madison? Grace asked one night, anxious. Jacob sat down beside her. Some people don't understand our situation, sweetheart. They think Madison is in trouble. Will she have to leave? Grace's voice trembled. I'll do everything I can to keep her here, Jacob promised, though uncertainty gnawed inside him. At night, Madison was plagued by nightmares. She woke drenched in sweat, trembling. Jacob often heard her pacing in the living room at 2 or 3 a.m. I'm ruining your life. And Grace's, she whispered one night, curled up on the stairs. You're not ruining anything, Jacob said, sitting beside her. Preston is the one doing this. But if I go back to him? No, Jacob said firmly. That's not an option. You chose freedom, and I'll help you protect that choice. Madison looked at him, eyes glistening. Why? Why are you doing all this for me? We've only known each other a few weeks, Jacob thought. When Olivia was dying, she told me real love isn't measured by time. She said sometimes you meet someone your soul has known forever. You believe that? Jacob held her gaze. I didn't before, but now I do. The silence between them grew charged with meaning. Madison whispered, I feel it too. It was the first time they truly acknowledged their feelings, even as adversity closed in around them. The next day, David called with bad news. Preston has filed a civil lawsuit, David said. He's accusing Jacob of interference with contract and emotional damages. He's demanding $5 million in compensation. Jacob's head spun. $5 million? I don't even have $5,000 in my account. That's the point, David explained. He doesn't necessarily want to win. He wants to drain your resources, bankrupt you so you can't fight back. And Grace? This is worse. Preston contacted Child Protective Services, accusing you of creating an unstable environment. They'll be inspecting your home next week. That night, Jacob sat in his small office, overwhelmed. Everything he had rebuilt after Olivia's death, stability for Grace, his freelance work, their fragile peace, was under siege. Madison knocked and entered. Jacob, I've decided. He looked up, saw the resolve in her eyes. I'll meet Preston, she said. I'll try to negotiate. No, Jacob shot to his feet. You can't. He won't let you go twice. But if I can persuade him. Madison, Jacob clasped her hand. Listen to me. I know you want to protect me and Grace, but going back to Preston isn't a solution. It's surrender. Then what do we do? Jacob stared out the window, the San Francisco lights shimmering like distant sparks of hope. We fight. We prove Preston can't buy everything, can't control everyone. How? I don't know yet, Jacob admitted. But David said Preston has one weakness: pride. He hates being publicly challenged. Maybe that's where we strike. Madison looked at him, torn between admiration and fear. Jacob, you're risking everything for me. Grace, your home, your whole life. No, Jacob said gently. I'm risking it for us. For the family we could be. For the first time since Preston found them, Madison smiled genuinely. Family? If you want it, Jacob said. If we survive this. Madison placed her hand on his cheek. I want that, Jacob. More than anything, that night they kissed for the first time, in the small room, surrounded by legal documents strewn across the table. It wasn't a storybook kiss, but a promise. Two people choosing to stand together in the storm. When they pulled apart, both knew the hardest battle still lay ahead. Preston Caldwell hadn't played his final card, and tomorrow, Child Protective Services would arrive, perhaps to decide Grace's fate. On Wednesday morning, Jacob woke at 5 to prepare for the Child Protective Services inspection. He cleaned the house for the third time, checked the fridge to ensure it was stocked with healthy food, and reviewed all of Grace's paperwork. Report cards, medical records, immunization certificates. Madison rose early to help. She had already decided to take the day off work to be present for the visit. Are you sure I should stay? She asked nervously. Maybe me being here will just make things worse. You're part of this family, Jacob said firmly. If they have a problem with that, it's their problem. At exactly 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Jacob opened it to find a stern-faced, middle-aged woman holding a thick clipboard. I'm Margaret Sullivan from San Francisco Child Protective Services, she introduced. We have an inspection scheduled for today. Yes, please come in, Jacob said, trying to mask his tension. Mrs. Sullivan stepped inside, her professional gaze scanning every corner of the house. She scribbled notes constantly on cleanliness, safety equipment, the general environment. And you are? She asked upon seeing Madison. I'm Madison Clark, Madison replied. I'm staying here temporarily. How long is temporary? About a month, Madison admitted. Mrs. Sullivan jotted more notes. Mr. Turner, can you explain this living arrangement, especially with a child in the house? Anger flared in Jacob, but he contained it. Madison is my friend. She's going through a difficult time, and I offered to help. Grace enjoys having her here. Where is Grace now? She's at school. I didn't want to disrupt her routine. Mrs. Sullivan proceeded to inspect each room. Grace's bedroom, the kitchen, the bathroom. She asked about Jacob's income, Grace's daily schedule, even whether Madison had any criminal record. I have several reports regarding this situation, she said, flipping through her file. There are allegations that Ms. Clark is being held against her will, creating an unstable environment for Grace. That is completely false, Jacob replied. Madison is entirely free. She has a job, a bank account, and can leave whenever she chooses. May I see proof? Mrs. Sullivan turned to Madison. Madison produced her pay stub from the nonprofit and a bank statement. I'm here because I want to be, she said firmly. No one is forcing me. Mrs. Sullivan examined the documents, then continued questioning about Madison's relationship with Grace, their daily activities, and whether there were any conflicts in the home. The inspection lasted nearly 2 hours. At last, she closed her clipboard. I will need to interview Grace separately, she said. That's standard procedure. Jacob grew anxious. Could you wait until she's home? I don't want to alarm her at school. Very well. I'll return at 4 this afternoon." After she left, Jacob and Madison sat in heavy silence. "She doesn't seem to like me," Madison sighed. "She doesn't like the situation," Jacob corrected. "But we were prepared. The house is clean, Grace is well cared for, and you showed independent proof." That afternoon, when Grace came home, Jacob explained gently about the interview. "A lady will come ask you a few questions about life at home," he said. "Just answer honestly. There's nothing to worry about." "Did I do something wrong, Daddy?" Grace asked anxiously. "Not at all, sweetheart. This is just what they do when someone new is living with us." When Mrs. Sullivan returned, she requested to speak with Grace in a private room. Jacob couldn't hear, only glimpse through the window as his daughter answered calmly. Half an hour later, Mrs. Sullivan emerged with Grace following. The girl ran straight into Jacob's arms. "I told her I like Madison here," Grace said excitedly, "and that I feel safe and happy." Mrs. Sullivan scribbled her final notes. "I'll have my report ready within a week," she told Jacob. "In the meantime, please maintain stability in the household." When she left, the family collapsed in relief. At least the first round was over. "Daddy," Grace chirped at dinner, "she asked if I wanted Madison to stay." "And what did you say?" Madison asked. "I said I want her to stay forever," Grace answered innocently. "Because she makes Daddy happier, and she makes pancakes better than him." Jacob and Madison burst into laughter, the first real lightness they had felt in days. But the reprieve was short. That evening, David Chen called with fresh news. "Preston just escalated," David said over the phone. "He's hired Harrison and Associates, one of the most powerful law firms in California. They've filed for a restraining order to keep Jacob away from Madison." "Can they really do that?" Jacob asked. "If they fabricate convincing claims and land the right judge, yes. They'll argue you're manipulating a vulnerable woman and creating a dangerous situation." Listening on speaker, Madison's face went pale. "They're trying to say I'm unstable?" "A common tactic," David explained. "They'll point to you fleeing your wedding as proof you're unwell, and claim Jacob exploited that." "Can we fight it?" Jacob asked. "Yes, but you'll need strong evidence of Madison's mental stability and the voluntary nature of your relationship. Most importantly, we must expose Preston's true motive." "What do you mean?" "I've dug deeper into Preston Caldwell," David said, "and I found something interesting. This marriage with Madison wasn't just about romance. Major business deals depended on it." Jacob and Madison exchanged stunned looks. "What kind of deals?" "Her father, Richard Clark, owns a major real estate development company. They've been negotiating a $200 million project with Caldwell Industries. The marriage between Madison and Preston was the insurance for that deal." Madison choked back a gasp. "So I was just part of a transaction?" "Seems so. If we can prove that in court, it will show Preston doesn't care about your happiness or mental health. He's protecting business interests." A spark of hope lit in Jacob. "How do we prove it?" "We need evidence, emails, preliminary contracts, any document showing the marriage was tied to the deal." Madison's expression hardened. "I know where we can find it." "Where?" Jacob asked. "Preston's home office. He has a safe in his study. I've seen him keep important documents there." Jacob shook his head. "That's too dangerous. If you're caught—" "This might be our only chance," Madison said. "This weekend, Preston will be at a conference in Los Angeles. The penthouse will be empty." David paused. "Legally, I can't encourage this. But if Madison still has a valid key—" "I do," Madison confirmed, "and technically, some of my belongings are still there." Jacob felt uneasy. This plan could save them, or destroy everything if it went wrong. "If we do this," he said, "we have to be extremely careful, and we need a backup plan." "Jacob, you don't have to be involved," Madison said, gripping his hand. "This is my problem." "No," he said firmly. "We've faced everything together. We'll end it together." That night, they drew up a detailed plan for the weekend mission. This could be their last chance to turn the tide before Preston used the law to tear them apart forever. But they both knew, if caught, not just Madison, but Jacob and Grace would pay a very heavy price. On Friday night, Jacob sat in his small study, poring over the floor plan of Preston's building. Madison had redrawn the penthouse layout from memory, marking the office and the safe's location. "He usually flies private to Los Angeles on Friday evenings," Madison explained. "The conference starts Saturday morning and runs through Sunday. We'll have the whole weekend." "What about security?" Jacob asked. "The building has 24/7 guards, but they know me, and I still have the key card for the private elevator. Preston hasn't canceled it. He still hopes I'll come back." David Chen sat in the chair across from them, his expression tight. "Legally, this is still trespassing, even if Madison has a key." "But if we find evidence," Jacob pressed. "If it's strong enough, the court might admit it, especially if it proves Preston's fraudulent motive." Grace was spending the weekend at her friend Emma's house, a plan Jacob had arranged long before. Now a relief since she wouldn't be home during this dangerous mission. "I still think I should go alone," Madison said for the third time. "If I get caught, at least you can still take care of Grace." "We've been over this," Jacob replied. "Two people are faster, and if anything happens, I need to be there to protect you." David closed his laptop. "I'll stay at my office. Call if anything goes wrong. I'll meet you at the station if needed." Saturday, 9 p.m. Jacob and Madison drove to Nob Hill, home to San Francisco's most exclusive towers. Preston's penthouse was on the 45th floor of a sleek glass skyscraper overlooking the entire city. "I used to think I was lucky to live here," Madison said as they parked in the garage. "Now it just feels like a gilded cage." In the lobby, the security guard, a black man named Marcus, looked up from his newspaper. "Ms. Clark," he said warmly, "long time no see. Is Mr. Caldwell home?" "No, he's in Los Angeles," Madison answered smoothly. "I just came to pick up some things I left behind." "And this is—" Marcus glanced at Jacob. "My friend Jacob. He's helping me carry things." Marcus nodded and went back to his paper. Madison swiped the key card, and they stepped into the private elevator. "Easier than I expected," Jacob exhaled. "The hard part is still ahead," Madison reminded. Preston's penthouse was a modern showpiece, soaring ceilings, panoramic glass walls with a 360-degree view of the bay, sleek designer furniture, expensive artwork. Yet Jacob felt no warmth. Everything was too perfect, too cold, like a magazine spread, not a home. "The office is this way," Madison whispered, leading him down a long corridor. The study was cavernous, a massive walnut desk, floor-to-ceiling shelves, a wall lined with awards and photos alongside politicians. Behind a painting, the safe waited. "The code is his mother's birthday," Madison said, as she tapped it in. "Preston has little sentiment, but he's got a serious Oedipus complex." The safe clicked open with a soft beep. Inside were dozens of neatly arranged folders. "What are we looking for?" Jacob asked, pulling on the latex gloves David had given him. "Anything tied to Clark Development or the Marina Bay deal," Madison said, rifling through files. "That's Papa's big negotiation." Jacob pulled out a folder labeled Marina Bay, Phase 1. Inside were stacks of printed emails, preliminary contracts, financial reports. "Madison, look at this," he whispered. An email from Richard Clark, her father, to Preston, dated 3 weeks ago. "Preston, I understand your concerns about Madison, but you must realize, no marriage, no Marina Bay deal. The Clark Development Board has been clear. They want to see a family alliance before committing $200 million. You must bring my daughter back and proceed with the wedding this month, or we'll lose the project to Anderson Group." Madison's face went pale. "Papa sold me for a contract." Jacob dug deeper and found more. A memo from Preston's attorney explicitly stating, "Marriage is a prerequisite for the Marina Bay Agreement." An email from Anderson Group offering better terms if Preston failed to secure the family alliance. Financial records showing Preston had already invested $50 million in Marina Bay. Money he'd lose if the deal collapsed. "This is it," Jacob said. "The real motive. You were never someone he loved, just the key to his biggest deal." Madison snapped photos with her phone. "We'll need originals for court." "David said only take the critical ones," Jacob whispered, carefully sliding a few core documents into his jacket. Suddenly, they heard the elevator whirring. "Someone's coming up," Madison hissed, her pulse quickening. Jacob checked his watch. 10:30 p.m. "Don't tell me Preston came back early." Madison shook her head, but fear flickered in her eyes. Could be security. Or the elevator stopped at the penthouse level. Keys jingled. The front door opened. "Madison?" Preston's voice echoed through the living room. "Are you here?" They froze. Preston was back, and he knew they were there. "Any other exit?" Jacob whispered. "Only the main elevator and the fire stairs, both through the living room," Madison whispered back. Footsteps approached. "Madison, I know you're here." Marcus told me Jacob stuffed the documents back into the safe and shut it. But too late. The office door swung open. Preston Caldwell strode in, still in his tailored suit, looking worn from travel. His face shifted from surprise to fury. "So, you came back," he said coldly, "and brought your boyfriend." "Preston," Madison said steadily, "I just came to collect my things." "From my safe?" Preston's eyes darted to Jacob's jacket pocket. "What are you after?" Jacob stepped between them. "We haven't done anything wrong." Preston sneered. "Breaking in, stealing documents. I think the police would disagree." He pulled out his phone, but Madison's voice cut sharp. "Don't, Preston! Before you call anyone, we should talk." Preston paused, curiosity flickering. "About what?" Madison drew a deep breath. "About Marina Bay. About the deal with Papa. About why you really wanted to marry me." Preston's face darkened. He realized they knew. "You don't understand," he said, but the confidence was gone. "Oh, I understand perfectly," Madison said firmly, stepping forward. "To you, I was never a person to love. I was an asset to trade." And in that moment, the true confrontation began. Preston froze for a few seconds, as if weighing his options. Then he slowly slid his phone back into his suit pocket, a cold smile on his face. "So, you found out," he said, no longer pretending to be gentle. "I was only wondering how long it would take you." Madison trembled slightly, but held her ground. "You're not even going to deny it?" "Why would I?" Preston walked toward the desk, every inch the master on his own turf. "That's how the world works, Madison. Marriage in our circles has always been about alliances, about leverage. Only the naive believe in something called true love." Jacob felt anger surge through him. "She isn't some bargaining chip you can trade." Preston looked at Jacob the way one looks at an insect. And who are you? A broke widower who thinks he can touch someone like Madison? He smirked. Do you have any idea what kind of life she's used to? Private drivers, house staff, limitless designer labels, and you think you can give her what, exactly? I can give her freedom, Jacob said calmly, firmly. Freedom? Preston laughed sharply. Freedom for what? To work a minimum wage job? To live in that old Haight-Ashbury house? To worry about the electric bill at the end of the month? Madison stepped forward, her eyes blazing. Freedom to be myself. To choose for myself. To love and be loved for who I really am, not for my market value. Your real self? Preston scoffed. Do you even know what that is, Madison? You were born into privilege, educated at the best schools, raised to become the wife of a powerful man. That's your essence. Everything else is an illusion. Jacob recognized the tactic. Preston was planting doubt, trying to worm his way into Madison's resolve. You're wrong, Jacob said. I've seen Madison for who she really is. She's kind, strong, intelligent, and has a heart bigger than your entire empire. She doesn't need money or status to prove her worth. Preston turned to Madison, his eyes cold. And what do you think, Madison? Do you honestly believe you'll be happy living a poor man's life? When the money runs dry, when reality hits, you'll remember what you gave up. For a beat, Madison said nothing. Jacob's heart sank. Was Preston getting through to her? But then she spoke, her voice steady. You're right about one thing, Preston. I was used to living in luxury. I once thought it mattered. Jacob's pulse faltered. But these past 3 months, Madison continued, I've learned something all your wealth could never buy. I've learned how it feels to wake up without dread for the day ahead. I've learned the joy of working towards something meaningful. I've learned the feeling of being loved for who I am, not what I bring to the table. Preston's face drained of color. You'll regret this, Madison. When your little romance fades, you'll remember the life you threw away. Maybe, Madison admitted, but if I regret it, it will be for my own choice, not for a life dictated by someone else. Preston was silent for a moment. Then his tone grew sharper, dangerous. You think you can just walk away? You forget who I am. I can destroy this man. He jabbed a finger at Jacob. With one phone call. Like you destroyed Sarah Kim? Madison shot back suddenly. Preston stiffened. Where did you hear that? I lived with you for 3 years, Preston. I saw how you handled anyone who crossed you. Those sudden accidents, those baseless lawsuits, those manufactured scandals. Jacob understood. Madison was baiting him into an admission. I do what's necessary to protect my interests, Preston said icily. And you're a fool if you think I won't do the same to him. What will you do? Jacob demanded. Fabricate charges? Sabotage my job? Threaten my daughter? Preston's smile turned vicious. I'll start by making sure you lose custody. A single dad in chaos, living with a mentally unstable woman, dabbling in illegal activities. Child Protective Services will be very interested. That was the breaking point. Jacob strode forward, fury burning in his eyes. You will not touch my daughter. I don't have to, Preston hissed like a blade. The legal system will do it for me. Madison suddenly raised her voice. Jacob, were you recording this conversation? Jacob caught on instantly. He pulled out his phone, showing the recording app had been running since they entered. Every word. Preston's face went white. We have evidence of the Marina Bay deal, Madison declared. Proof that you treated me like a commodity. And now, proof you threatened Jacob and his daughter. Preston stood frozen, realizing the balance had shifted. You think you're clever. We don't need to be clever, Jacob said. We just need the truth. A heavy silence filled the room. Preston turned to the window, staring out at the city lights he once ruled like his kingdom. What do you want? He finally asked, his arrogance gone. Leave us alone, Madison said firmly. No more threats, no more harassment, no more legal games. Withdraw every suit, stop the surveillance, find another way to save Marina Bay. And if I refuse? Jacob tightened his grip on the phone. Then every file we have goes to the FBI, the IRS, and the press. I think they'll be very interested in how you persuade competitors. Preston said nothing for a long time, calculating every exit. At last, he gave a slow nod. Fine, he said. But Madison... He looked at her one last time. You'll regret this. For the first time that night, Madison smiled. Maybe. But if I do, it will be my regret, not yours. As they left the tower, Jacob felt as if he'd just woken from a long nightmare. Madison squeezed his hand. For the first time in weeks, her fingers didn't tremble. We're truly free now, she whispered. We're free, Jacob echoed, and he knew the final battle was over. Now, all that remained was to learn how to build a new life from the fragments the war had left behind. 3 weeks after their showdown with Preston, Jacob woke to the sound of laughter from Grace and Madison drifting in from the kitchen. He looked out the window. Sunlight poured through San Francisco's trees, scattering across the small garden they had begun to revive together. Just as promised, Preston had withdrawn every lawsuit. David Chen called with the good news. All charges have been dropped. Child Protective Services has closed its file with the conclusion, no evidence of neglect, and you are officially free. But freedom did not mean easy. Jacob and Madison still faced the very real challenges of building a shared life from 2 very different worlds. We need to talk about money, Madison said one evening after Grace had gone to bed. I don't want to be a financial burden on you. Jacob set down his coffee cup. You're not a burden. We're building a family together. But I want to contribute more, Madison insisted. The nonprofit has offered me a full-time role with better pay. I'm also considering studying psychology so I can help other women more effectively. Jacob saw the light in her eyes when she spoke of her work. You'd go back to school? Maybe. I know it would mean tightening our belts for a few years, but... Madison, Jacob interrupted gently, taking her hand. If that's what you want, we'll figure it out. We've survived worse. The challenges weren't only financial. As much as Grace adored Madison, she sometimes wavered in the face of change. Daddy, she asked one evening while Madison worked late, can Madison replace Mom? Jacob sat beside her. Sweetheart, no one can replace your mom. She'll always be your mom, and her love will never change. Then what is Madison? Jacob thought carefully. She's someone I love, and she loves you too. She's not trying to be your new mom. She's another very important person in your life. You can be loved by many people in different ways. Grace nodded slowly. Like I can love both Mom and you, even if it's different? Exactly. In the following weeks, Jacob watched Grace grow more comfortable with the idea of an expanded family. Madison handled it with grace, honoring Olivia's place in Grace's heart while creating new memories of their own. Madison, Grace asked one day as they gardened, do you want to have kids of your own? Madison paused, answering honestly. That's a big question, sweetheart. Maybe one day I will. But that would never mean I'd love you any less. Love isn't like pizza. It doesn't shrink when there are more slices. Grace giggled. Did you just compare love to pizza? Madison laughed. I was trying to explain it in a way you'd understand. But you get what I mean, right? Grace nodded, then hugged her tight. I love you, Madison. Tears stung Madison's eyes. I love you too, Grace. By late spring, Jacob made a big decision to expand his freelance work into a small IT consulting firm. Madison encouraged him and even offered to use her marketing skills to build their brand. We could be business partners, she said one evening as they sketched plans. You handle the tech, I'll manage marketing and clients. You're sure? Working with someone you love can be complicated. Madison smiled. We survived Preston Caldwell. We can handle a small company. They named it Turner and Associates, a simple name for a new beginning. One May afternoon, Jacob received an unexpected call from Margaret Sullivan of Child Protective Services. Mr. Turner, she said, I'm calling to inform you that Grace's case is officially closed. After 2 months of observation, we find she's thriving in her current environment. Relief washed over Jacob. Thank you. In fact, Sullivan continued, it's rare to see such dramatic improvement. Her teacher, Miss Peterson, reports Grace is more confident, more engaged, and, most importantly, happier. That evening, Jacob shared the good news. So no one can take me away anymore? Grace asked. That's right, sweetheart. We'll be together. Grace turned to Madison. You'll stay too, right? Madison looked at Jacob, then back at Grace. If you both want me to. We want you to stay forever, Grace said firmly. Jacob knew the moment had come. He stood, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small box. Actually, he said, kneeling before Madison, I've been preparing for this. Madison gasped as he revealed a simple but beautiful ring. Jacob. Madison Clark, he said, opening the box. Will you marry me? Not because of social pressure or business deals, but because we love each other and want to build a life together? Tears streamed down her cheeks. Yes. Yes, I will, Grace squealed, throwing her arms around them both. We're going to be a real family. We already are, Jacob smiled. Now it's just official. As they embraced in the little Victorian living room, sunlight from the garden streamed through the window. Jacob thought of the journey that had brought them here. From the rainy night he met Madison in a soaked wedding dress, through their battle with Preston, to this perfect moment. Do you regret it? Madison whispered. Regret what? Stopping that night. Bringing me home. All the trouble I caused. Jacob looked into her eyes, then at Grace, who was sketching their new family. No, he said firmly. It was the best decision I ever made. Because sometimes, split-second choices can change an entire life. Sometimes you have to walk through storms to find peace. And when you find it, true love, a real family, every battle is worth it. 1 year later, Jacob stood in the backyard garden admiring the roses they had planted, not to replace Olivia's garden, but to create something new that still honored her memory. Inside, Madison was baking Grace's birthday cake. She was turning 9. Turner and Associates was thriving, and Madison had enrolled in a master's program in psychology at UC San Francisco. Grace dashed outside in a new dress Madison had bought. Daddy, Madison says we can have the party in the garden. Jacob laughed, scooping her up. Sounds perfect. Daddy, Grace said suddenly, serious, I want to thank you. For what, sweetheart? For bringing Madison home. For making our family bigger, Jacob's eyes stung. And you made Madison feel welcome, Grace. Do you think Mom is happy? Because we're happy? Jacob looked up at the clear San Francisco sky. I think she's very happy. She always wanted that for us. Madison appeared in the doorway, hair tied back, apron dusted with flour, smiling at them. Ready to blow out candles? Grace took her hand. Will you make a wish with me? Of course, sweetheart. Jacob followed them inside, heart brimming with joy. This wasn't the life he had once imagined after losing Olivia, but it was a beautiful life, full of love and hope. As they leaned over the cake and blew out the candles together, Jacob knew his wish had already come true. A family built not from obligation, but from love, choice, and the courage to protect what matters most. Sometimes the best decisions begin with stopping to help a stranger. Because love isn't about finding perfection. It's about finding someone worth fighting for. If this story touched your heart, remember, the most beautiful chapters often begin when you find the courage to take a different path. Subscribe to True Tale Time for more stories of love, courage, and hope.